In this video, I want to discuss Matthew chapter 7 verses 1 to 5, where Jesus says, "Judge not, lest you be judged." And the reason why I want to talk about this is because this is one of the most misunderstood Bible verses in almost the entire Bible. Now, let's begin by reading it. Read Matthew chapter 7, beginning at verse 1. "Judge not, that ye not be judged. For with the same judgment that you judge, you shall be judged. And with the same measure that you mete, it shall be measured to you again. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considereth not the beam that is in thine own eye? Or how will you say to thy brother, Let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, and behold, a beam is in thine own eye? Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam of thine own eye, and then thou shalt see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye." Now, people look at this verse and they seem to think that this is saying that a Christian cannot judge someone else in any circumstances and for any sin. That is simply not what this text is talking about. If we just look at the context, and it's very important to always consider the context, if you just look at verse 6, the very next verse, it says this, "Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again to rend you." Now, this here is talking about people. And Jesus is saying that you need to discern who is a dog and who is a swine. That's pretty full on. I mean, you're having to look at someone and say, you know what, I think that person's a dog, I think that person's a swine, and I'm not going to give these pearls of wisdom to them. That's judging. Now, let me give you another verse. This is just in verse 15 of the same chapter. It says, "Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves." Again, this is talking about people, and it's saying, beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing. That is, they come to you pretending to be a Christian, pretending to be a pastor, perhaps pretending to be a shepherd, yet inwardly they are ravenous wolves. That takes discernment. You need to judge whether someone is a false prophet or not. And with a command like this comes the authority to do so. So I don't think Jesus is saying in verses 1 to 5 of chapter 7 that we cannot judge someone in any circumstances and it all needs to just be left to God to sort it all out on the day of judgment. That is not what Jesus is saying. Judging is actually all through the Bible. If we look in John chapter 7, verse 24, we read this, "Judge not according to the appearance, but judge with righteous judgment." You see that? We are told by Jesus to judge with righteous judgment. Let's look at 1 Corinthians chapter 6. 1 Corinthians chapter 6. And verse 3. "Know ye not that we shall judge angels? How much more things that pertain to this life?" You see that? We as Christians will one day judge angels. How much more should we judge things that pertain to this life? Let me give you another verse in chapter 5, verse 11. "But now I have written unto you, not to keep company, if any man that is called a brother," somebody who's called a brother, "be a fornicator, or greedy, or an idolater, or a railer, or a drunkard, or an extortioner. With such a one, no, not to eat. For what have I to do to judge them also that are without, that are outside the church? Do you not judge them that are within? But them that are without, God judges. Therefore, put away from among yourselves that wicked person." Here, Paul is telling us that we need to judge people within the church, and if we judge that they are living in sin and unrepentant of that sin, they are to be removed from the church. You're not even to fellowship, you're not even to eat with them. That means we're judging people. So to read the words of Jesus as saying that we can't judge seems to be in total contradiction with the rest of the Bible. I want to look back at Matthew chapter 7, and I want to show you what Jesus is really saying. Matthew chapter 7. Verse 1 to 5. Now I want you to notice verse 5 specifically. It says, "Thou hypocrite." What Jesus is talking about is unrighteous and hypocritical judging. He specifically says in verse 5, "First cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then thou shalt see clearly to cast the mote or the speck out of thy brother's eye." What Jesus is talking about here is hypocritical judgment. So for example, if I was an absolute drunkard and a fornicator, and then I came to someone and said, "Hey, you shouldn't be fornicating and you shouldn't be getting drunk," that would be hypocritical judgment. I would be looking at someone with a beam in my own eye, a great big log in mine own eye. But if I'm someone who's a born-again believer, who has repented of my sin, put my faith and trust in Jesus Christ, if I'm someone that's trying to follow the scriptures as best as I can, seeking to know the will of God, and I'm in a church and people around me in that church are living in sin, it is not wrong for me to go to them and say, "Hey, this is wrong. You have broken God's law." In fact, the Bible says when you see somebody in sin in Matthew 18, to go to them privately. And if they don't listen, then bring 2 or 3 witnesses. And if they still don't listen, then bring them to the church. And if they don't listen to the church, then they are to be removed from the fellowship. Jesus here is talking about hypocritical judgment. "Judge not that you not be judged. For in the same way that you judge others, in the same measure that you meet, it will be measured again unto you." So Jesus is not saying we cannot judge. He's simply saying that we need to be not hypocritical or unrighteous in our judgment. I hope you've liked this video. Please leave me a comment if you agree or disagree. Give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel. I'll see you in the comments section, and you'll see me in my next video.